Hieronymous brushed Tori's hair back behind her ears as he pulled her into his chest. He wasn't quite sure when she had fallen asleep, but he had used strength spell after strength spell in order to keep his body going most of the day and into the evening. He'd always known that Tori was insatiable, but this was more than that. Tori had missed him. He was always afraid that she would have moved on without him, but she had spent almost 7 months in isolation, trying to perform all of his duties by herself. It wasn't fair that Tori had suffered so much without him there, although he still couldn't understand why his father hadn't yet intervened. Surely he would not trust Tori, a wild seed, to carry the Grabiner title herself, which meant that he was most likely dead. Both the Blazing's reaction to his father's name and Tori's staunch refusal to tell him anything seemed to prove that much, although he wasn't quite sure why Tori did not want to tell him what happened. Did she have a hand in his demise? Tori was not a killer, and yet he couldn't imagine why else she wouldn't tell him. Unless she still didn't trust him not to overreact to that news. Even though it still felt considerably difficult to do so, he was trying to keep his anger in check. He was trying, although it was starting to seem that he needed to try harder. It was so frustrating to watch his physical body fail him, to not even be able to write a letter without the muscles in his hands seizing, which only meant that he was going to need to rely on Tori more than ever. He did not want to rely on her. In truth, he wanted his independence back. Over the past week, he had to rely on Tori to feed him and help him swallow, and he was embarrassed with forcing her to play the role of his caretaker. Tori was his wife. He should have been there to support her, to care for her, just as he had always been. Tori was too young to spend the rest of her life catering to his every need. Although, hadn't she been prepared to do just that? He needed more information. He could not remember what had happened to him, or what had caused him to fall into such a state. Had he been cursed? He considered that maybe even Tori didn't know herself, but if she didn't know, why didn't she just say so? No, Tori knew something. He wasn't sure how he knew. Maybe he just knew her that well, but Tori was struggling through some trauma that she would never deal with because she was too overcome with taking care of his needs. It was just like what happened with Damien all over again. Tori neglected her own needs to care for everyone around her, although, in this case, she had her attention focused solely on him. On one hand, he was relieved that Tori was trying. She was willing to open up to him again. She was willing to give him a second chance. She was willing to try to make this work. But accepting their relationship and embracing it were two different things. She was willing to be with him again, but did she want to be? Or did she just feel coerced by a sense of duty to stay married to him and assume the duties that she had to perform as the wife of a viscount? He wasn't sure, and that frustrated him. He tried to think back to how he had made Tori fall in love with him before. He remembered how he had hurt her and scared her after the whole school found out that they were married. He remembered how terrified she had been and how terrified he had become when he realized that he took his anger out on the wrong person. He had been so afraid that he had lost her that he would be haunted by that mistake for the rest of his life. But she had forgiven him, and they had moved past it. Would she be able to forgive him for this? He still wasn't sure. He thought he had made it clear to her how much pain he had endured in order to make it back to her. He thought that she understood that Violet was just a shadow on his past and nothing more, but her comment today meant that she still did not fully believe him, and he wasn't sure how he could make her understand how much he loved her. So, that was 3 problems in all. How to rekindle their relationship. How to make Tori open up to him about what happened. How to make Tori understand that he wanted her, and that he had gotten over Violet years ago. The only way to solve all three of those problems was to make Tori fall in love with him, more in love with him than she had ever been before, so much so that she trusted him again. So much so that she wanted to open up to him again because she wanted him to comfort her. He wanted to comfort her more than anything. He wanted to be there for her like she had been there for him over the past few weeks, but he could not do that if Tori would not let him in. He could just let time take its course, but he couldn't wait weeks. He couldn't wait months. "I'm so sorry, Tori," he whispers as he casts a spell over her sleeping form. It was partly an infatuation spell, partly an affection spell, because he didn't know which one would give him greater results right now. He had tested both in the past, and although both spells seemed to make Tori more emotional, as far as he was concerned, they seemed to fade within the course of a day, and she never seemed aware of it. He didn't mean to distort her emotions. The first time had been an accident. But Tori seemed to be so much happier and felt so much more assured and confident in their relationship after the spell that he thought it might ease the ache of the distance between them. He had considered telling her before, but considering how most of their conversations dissolved into tense silence, there wasn't a chance he could tell her now. After all, there was no spell that could create true love, but Tori already loved him. He was sure of that much. Now, he just had to make her remember that.